Austin Moss is not just building businesses, he's building movements. From co-founding a 50 million venture capital firm to empowering founders through his podcast, The Austin Moss Show, he's on a mission to help entrepreneurs scale smarter and live more purposefully. Whether it's health tech or SaaS or real estate or alternative lending, he's making sure impact stays at the center of it all. Austin, I'm thrilled to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be on here. Thanks, Ahmad. Appreciate
Of
it.
course. Let's start. We started chatting before, and maybe we could pick up a little bit on your story. You said you're a self-learner. Can you tell a little bit more about your story?
Yeah, I mean, where do I start? I live in Kansas City. My family farms out in western Kansas, so I kind of had a little bit of that in my background. And I think that kind of led to a lot of how I guess designed my life per se, not intentionally, but when you look back on it, it's like, oh, that makes sense, right? I had a really good GPA. I was like 4.3 GPA in high school, had full rides to play college basketball. And I just kind of got so burnt out, and I was getting into business really like my junior year of high school. I got into my first business that was like not, printing labels on burnt CDs or some kind of thing, like an actual business. And so I got into that and I got a taste of entrepreneurship, and I was just like, this is what I want to do. I know I wasn't going to go pro in any sport. I'm a 6'6" white guy that can't jump, or you can't jump, can't shoot the three, but I played good ball, but I just knew I wasn't going pro. And so I was like, business is what I'm going to get into, right? Business is my thing, entrepreneurship. I had a mentor at the time, and I was kind of playing that like, okay, I'm going to go to college or I'm going to start business. And he wasn't going to make the decision for me, but he did say that he went to business school and did not have any successful professor teaching him who was successful at running a company. And so that's all he told me. And so that's what stuck with me ever since. And so I got into business and I just kind of had to learn it, right? I just had to figure stuff out. And that's kind of how my whole career has been, is getting in and just starting to learn. And I was just so curious of a learner. So I think that helps with it. But yeah, I think just the curiosity allows me to have the interest to dive deep into things and learn them quickly.
And mentorship is such a privilege, right? It's such a unique opportunity. Had you not had that mentor, do you think you would have still done the same thing?
No, no. I mean, because I didn't, I read, he handed me Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 17 by Kiyosaki, and none of my friends were reading that. Nobody ever told me anything about that. And so I read that book, and it talks about, how you move from, have you read that? Have you read Rich Dad Poor Dad? Yeah. So,
Yes.
you move through that cycle. If anyone hasn't read it, it's a great book, great concepts to learning from, like, really what are the different core ways that people make money, right? Employees, on self, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, kind of independent single person companies, and business systems and investments. And the business system and investments on the passive side was really what intrigued me. I'm like, oh, I don't have to trade my time for money anymore. I can create things that create income. Now I went so far to the opposite of like get rich quick, and realized quickly that all businesses take ton of effort and a ton of things that, there's not really any get rich quick out there. So I had to learn that pretty quickly. And I was, I grew up on a farm, so the work ethic was not scary or fearful to me. It was just figuring out what to do was really more what it was. And I'm very fortunate that, I don't know if it's my DNA or what, or the way I was raised, but it just, you know, the engineering part of me, maybe. If I were to go to school, I'd probably be into engineering. But yeah, I would have gone to college. My older brother was an attorney, so I probably was going to go into something that just made a ton of money. And that was going to be probably my thesis of going into college. But I was a big partier, so I probably wouldn't have got much out of it. And so, looking back, who knows what it really took. But yeah, we're at where we're at now, so things are good.
I think most people will see what you've done and think, wow, super courageous. You didn't go to college. But can you tell us about your mindset or your mind frame of how you thought, okay, let's skip this, or what was going through your mind at that time you said, okay, maybe college isn't for me.
Yeah. Well, so it was the thoughts started between my junior and senior year of high school. And so, I had summer basketball. I was skipping it because I had at the time I had my own business. I ended up getting a job at Sprint Corporation over the summer. So I was working 8 to 5, making like 45,000 a year at 17. They didn't know I was not 18. I didn't tell them I wasn't. But so I don't know how I got hired, but I got hired through a temp agency. I worked at Sprint over the summer. So working this full-time job, making about another 30, 40,000 a year on the side through this, business that I started. And so I'm going into my senior year and I'm like, man, I'm making about 80,000 a year if I don't go to school, but it's going to mess up a bunch of stuff. And so I'm like, and then college is like, I've talked to guys that played ball in college and it's like 3 full-time jobs, right? You have no time. There was never going to be a chance for me to ever really do stuff that I wanted to do to make money. I was going to be kind of locked in my mind. I was going to be behind the curve, right? I was ready to go. I was always, money motivated and mature, and I just wanted to go, and I didn't want to waste 4 years. In my mind, it was wasting 4 years, right? I'd met too many people that got out of college with no degree or with a degree, but no correlation to their income and no correlation to what they did with their career. Yeah, there's a lot of connections that I probably missed from it, but outside of that, I think, how much I would have just partied and just not really gotten what I think I needed at the time. So all that stuff was going through my mind. I had basketball coaches coming to my house, like, why are you not at basketball camp? You played varsity all year, all 3 years, and you're going to your senior year and you're not showing up to camp. You're not talking to recruiters. And I was just done, man. I was burnt out. I think that was part of it too. I was burnt out on basketball because I played, all 4 seasons. I didn't play any other sports really after like 7th grade, other than the basketball year round. And so I think it's a combination of all of it. My parents, thankfully, I don't know if they were supported by choice or just the fact that I was so hard-headed that it didn't matter. If I get grounded, I would be like, okay, well, I'm going to leave anyway. I have my own car, my own phone, and so my mom would be like, well, I don't want you to leave. Don't leave, and so, but yeah, so they were supportive in it. I think they were probably questionable, obviously, about not going at first, but I had at that time saw too many people that were successful that didn't go to college. Actually, to be honest with you, almost all the people that I saw that were wildly successful at that age, at least at 17, it did not go to college. And so I had that in the back of my brain too, going on, right? So
Not 17-year-olds
that's a
that are
lot. That's a
successful.
lot.
It's not 17-year-olds that are successful. At 17, you saw people that were successful that didn't go to college. I find it extremely refreshing and very contrarian, actually. I find it refreshing because it's contrarian. I think that college can be overrated for a lot of people, and really they see it as an experience to, I don't know, maybe not the right mindset, but you were very centered and clear and convicted, like big conviction into what's going to make me successful. And for you, it was money. And you've scaled multiple ventures, built two $50 million funds. Most people struggle to do one. What was that decision-making framework that you consistently fall back on navigating high-stake opportunities, like not going to college and then doing these funds?
Risk. So my risk threshold is definitely, I think I can handle a lot more risk than most people. What I realized with it, I didn't know any of this, right? And it's all hindsight. You look back, I was just going with whatever opportunity was in front of me, really, when I was young. And I hear it now looking back, I'm like, I tried a lot of different things. I don't know if I necessarily failed as much as I pivoted in things, right? I just never, early on, I was just trying a bunch of stuff. And so I was trying to figure it out, trying to figure business out, mentoring people, coaching, I was speaking at 19. I had that business I built up. We had about 300 people on our team through that first company from 17 to about 22 years old before I got out of that business and went on to some other stuff. But from 17 to 22, I built that team up to over 300 people on my team. And we were, selling nationwide marketing services. And so I learned a lot through that of when you have to go get out of yourself and help somebody else, when you don't know what the hell you're doing in the first place, it forces you to have to learn quickly and have to be accountable and have to have something to provide value, right? I never wanted to bullshit people. So I had to if I wanted to create value, I needed to learn this stuff ahead of everybody else, right? And so that was always my thinking in everything. And it's just navigating and just the curiosity, really, right? Of taking the time and the energy and the effort to try and care. I never looked at everything as like I really wanted to go against the grain. I saw that it's correlated to the college talk, right? Like if majority of people are going to college and majority of people are coming out of college with something that I do not want, why would I want to go down that path? And so it's the same lens through everything I've done is I look at fruit on the tree of people who have been there, done that in that specific space or vertical. And if I like what they have, their lifestyle, because I've learned that too over time, money does not, is not the only lever to look at for like a life design of careers. And so it's all of it, right? It's the stress levels, the time, the commitment, how long did it take to get you there? And so I would ask a lot of questions really to understand how something works to then decide if I want to entertain that or not. And so that's, I think, when I think about it, that's what I look at really in anything I do.
How do you do your learning? Because I think this is critical to your success. You just mentioned you learn first, you make sure this is the path you want to go. What have other successful people done? But what does that look like? Is it mentorship? Is it YouTube videos? Is it reading books? What's your process?
I think it's all. I mean, I think it's whatever. I think it's just getting into the mindset of trying to break things down, right? Trying to understand all the workings of something versus just taking it for what it is on the outward facing, right? So if I ever saw an ad, for example, on a company, I wouldn't look at that as like the ad towards me to buy that company, buy that product. I would look at, my brain goes straight to, I wonder how much that cost to run that. Wonder what their ROI is. I wonder what, how long it took them to manufacture that. Like that's where my brain goes. And so I'm always constantly analyzing things, but the way that and that's how I learned it, to be honest with you. I mean, I just asked a lot of questions of people that ran other companies. I read books. I probably read outside of school books, like, they call them self-help books or whatever. Think and Grow Rich, A Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what you speak is what you get. Like things like that started getting into my brain. Just stuff that I never had heard before. So I'm like, okay, there's something I'm missing. I was 17 years in school. I haven't heard any of this stuff. There's a whole world out there that I probably don't know about. And moving from like Western Kansas on a farm to Kansas City, which is where I'm at now, that kind of did a little bit of that too. It was just, I was like, there's so much out there that I don't know. I need to learn. I want to understand. So it may be just something in my spirit or what it is, but I just had this knack to try and understand things, because I'd spent so many years trying to understand things that I didn't feel like were going to give me any value. Like what does it matter of, how my English is written in this English class for this 3-page story? Like it just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, how is this going to help me in a year make money or in 2 years make money? Or how is this going to help me get a better paying job? Like I didn't want a job. I wanted to run a business. So a lot of it was disconnected for me. So I needed to find something different that clicked with me.
And the investment world is very pedigree based. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of uh, cookie cutter mentality of you go to Ivy League, you go to Big Four, or you go to investment banking, you go to private equity, then you can do your own shop. You skipped everything. And how do you deal with that? How is it that, or how did you approach when someone says like, oh, you don't have the Blackstone experience? How do you know how, or why are you competing with them?
No, I mean, and that's great. That's a great question. So I think you're comparing two different things though, too. You're talking about people who are employees in finance, right? If you talk about, I meet with people on GPs and boards and LPs and investors, that's not the same sentiment, right? A lot of those guys have learned this space different ways, whether it's through exiting their own company, right? People learn a lot that way. They've never gone to school. They never went to any kind of educational classes, but through their business, they were making acquisitions. They were analyzing different opportunities. They were raising capital. They were going through different stages. So that in itself, you learn way more than you do in a 4-year finance degree. I don't care where you're at, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Kansas State, it doesn't matter. Like the experience of working in an industry for 4 years versus college for 4 years, I'll hire somebody all day long. If it's not a technical role, I'll hire someone all day long that's 22 who's worked for 4 years than somebody who's 22 and out of school. Like I would much rather have it because there's so many things that you learn of going and doing the work versus hearing it taught to you. And so back to your question about, how do I get through that is same way that I just told you. I saw so many people learn this stuff and will learn 50 different variations of it versus the one that was taught in a school book, because that's not real life. Everything is complex and, it's all, you got to be dynamic and you got to be able to move and understand how to pivot and all this different stuff. So there isn't a way to learn it other than doing it, in my opinion. To do it at scale,
I connect with you in many roles. Ways.
Yeah, like you can be in different roles, like an analyst or a capital raiser, capital markets, a CFO. Like you can be in these different roles, but if you want to run the company as a whole, run the GP, be a founder of something, it's not about the education. You hire that. You go find those people, right? It's about the vision, the strategy, having a purpose and really being able to pull all this stuff together. That's really what a founder or CEO or somebody who's been successful at the levels that I'm talking about. Now you can be successful, go get a degree and make $300,000 a year as an analyst or, doing something in a fund, but I don't think it's correlated to the ownership of a lot of these firms that I work with. It's not the same sentiment of who's working.
Perhaps I would argue that it could even hurt you, because having a square mindset, perhaps this is how it's done, this is how other people do it, this is how you do it, hurts you more than being like, okay, should it be done in this scenario, because the circumstances are always going to be different. So it almost frees you a little. And I want to poke a little bit on, you said, I can tolerate more risk than others. What does risk mean to you, and why can you tolerate more of it?
I think so. It was very questionable of not going to college, right? So when I did it and I succeeded, and I was like, so when I started seeing the success where, I bought a house when I was 19, my friends were at college, barely making it, and then when they came back for spring break and summers, they were at their parents' house, and I'm like, it's just not what I want. I was like, I was ready to go. Like, I think I was probably like at 14, 15, just ready to be an adult. I was like, I had fun and I'm like, I'm just ready to go. And so, yeah, sorry, I forgot where you were going with that. Repeat that again.
Where does that high risk or tolerance comes from? What does risk mean to you, and why can you tolerate more than others?
Yeah, so risk to me, there's risk in investments, there's risk in your time, there's risk in your relationships and emotions and all this stuff. But my risk I just knew that if I wanted more, I had to do something different, right? And so I started taking risks, right? I took a risk of, not going to college and starting a business. And if it failed right away, I don't know what I would have done, right? It didn't right away. I was going to make it work and it ended up working. And so the risk there that I was nerve-wracking over starting this and scaling it and doing there was risks at every single stage of that. And I pushed through those fears really. And that's what a lot of risk is fear and a lack of understanding, right? And so when I look at transactions, I try to de-risk them down to, that's more what I do, right? Something's risky, like it's an investment or an opportunity or a project that we're going to take on in one of our companies. Those are all risks. There's investment in that. There's time. So if I look at that, I'm like, well, the opposite of not doing it is staying stagnant and just kind of not doing anything or going backwards. So for us to continue to move the needle forward, whether that's in my businesses, my relationships, spiritually, whatever that may be, I need to push the envelope, right? I'm not going to grow. Nothing's going to get better or bigger without taking those risks. So the bigger risks I started taking, the bigger opportunities there were. Now, did I hit my face against the ground a couple of times pretty hard? You know, big guy fall hard. And so I did that a couple of times, but overall, it's like there was no other option other than taking risk. Now, when you look at it from a portfolio management standpoint of managing other people's money versus managing your own time, that's something I treat differently, right? I mean, I'm very analytical when it comes to managing money and time, but when it comes to money, but when it comes to managing like time and what I'm going to do with that, I'm a little more risk adverse to that because it's me and it doesn't affect other people so much. But when it affects other people, I gotta bring myself to their level or a mutual level of risk. And that's I have relationships like that, right? I have different businesses where one co-founder has a lot more risk tolerance than the other and they're different business models. And so you kind of, as a co-founder, you got to navigate with that relationship and be on the same page. And I get on the same page before we even start doing anything. But when I go into that, I just know that that has a different lens than this thing over here. And so I have different levels of risk that I take into different businesses, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can you take us on a moment, whether it was like money or time or maybe even trust, that taught you most about the hidden cost of being a leader and doing your own thing?
Let's see. So monetarily, a hidden cost of being a leader and entrepreneur.
Yeah, perhaps a moment where it's like there was a big lesson where you were like, okay, now I need to think about this differently.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, there's one scenario. So you mentioned the $250 million fund. So we started a fintech, consider like kind of like a Credit Karma, but for businesses to match lenders with capital, right? So going through that, I had no idea what I was doing, right? And so it was fine because of just my time and my own personal money. But when we went to go raise capital, right? So we raised our first round was a million, right? So we got in touch with somebody. I had to go through that whole raise of like conversations with investors, understanding what they care about. And so that you asked me earlier, how did I learn this stuff? Well, I had to go raise $1 million and I didn't have any money to pay anyone. So I had to figure it out. And so I just started meeting with people, talking through it, and started to learn like how I needed to reposition things, how I needed to correlate and understand what they want. So it's a big learning curve of like making sure people get what they want and not so much what you want. And at the end of the day, you do get what you want, but it's just a different mindset about going about it. And so the costs that I would say, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of stress, to be an entrepreneur and a founder. Sometimes I think about it. I'm like, it would be nice if my brain would allow me to sit at a desk or work. So it doesn't even have to be a desk job. I mean, it could be any job, but I was like, I just can't do it. I've been there, done that. Like I don't know if it's the fact that I have this urge to make, like, it's almost a game to me. Honestly, that's probably what it is. It's probably, I took basketball, I stopped playing a competitive sport, and I needed something to compete in, and I'm super competitive. So whatever it is, ping pong, darts, basketball, business, racing, whatever it may be, I compete. And so I think business to me is just the game. It's like the competition. Alex Hormozy talks about that. A lot of people talk about, business being like a game almost. And, because there's all different strategies. You can do it all the same way, but, or you can do it different ways and succeed or fail. And there's really, there's a lot of complexities to it, which makes it fun. And you don't have to do it any certain way, right? I mean, there are blueprints and guidelines to certain businesses and certain ways of doing things, but somebody created that initially. Why does it have to be that way, right? And so I think that's part of it too, is always questioning. Part of that questioning school, right, made me start questioning everything. So I would question every investment, I would question every opportunity, every client, every conversation, and try to run it through like, what am I missing? What is not right here? What's right here? And kind of weighing all that stuff. And you just learn it over years, putting yourself out there.
It's a good segue to go into investing. When you evaluate an investment opportunity or perhaps your latest one, which is a VC fund,
Hmm.
when you evaluate a startup, what's a red flag that you think most people overlook? That's something very important to you based on those lessons that you said that you questioned everything and that you can spot on like immediately.
Bullshit. I've gotten really good at picking up on bullshit, and really it's very easy, and so when you sit there with somebody and they're talking to you about what they're doing, right? You do it long enough and you can start to, and not even, with venture and startups and founders, just in business, right? You can start picking up on those relationships as to like, does this guy really know what the hell he's talking about, or is he a facade? And that's a lot of what it is navigating through like what people say versus what is reality, and having awareness enough to know where those spots are. So that's what you learn over time. You learn the quicker ways to get to the decisions because you've already seen this kind of thing, right? And you know what to check. So like in a typical, venture fund, right? You're not doing a lot of the checks that we would probably be doing, right? So because of my lending background, I'm trying to see what I can talk about, what I can't, but there's creative things, right? Sorry, I'm getting off track there.
But you're
So
good. It's
yeah, no,
I know
so
it's sensitive and perhaps part of secret sauce, but
yeah,
I want to think what do you think differently? Because you're an outside the box guy. Most VCs will be like market size, product market fit. What are their strategy to get to market? What's, like typical
yeah,
cookie cutter things. Maybe give
yes,
us one thing that
yeah.
you do
So
different.
so we look at the founder a lot heavier, right? We look at their competency and to see where we need to fill in the gaps. I think that's different too, because our venture fund, we have 5 operators, we have our board and then my co-founder and I, and we're all operators. We've all been operating businesses for 15, 20 years, minimum, some 40 years, 15 plus exits. So it's like, there's a lot of operator experience there, where in a lot of venture funds, you have like what you said, right? A Stanford, Harvard, Yale analysts, investment associates coming out of college, which they have like the mathematics and the finance and the MBA even, or whatever that may be, but they haven't been able to correlate it to real life market today. And that's where the gap is, I think, in college and being in and around the workspace. So that's where I'm saying, like, it's not that you don't learn a lot in 4 years. You may learn more in college, but you don't learn the right thing. You don't learn the thing that helps you move the needle forward, which is, what is the market looking like? What is the specific business? Because you could go into finance. I don't care what finance degree you get. We've done stuff with like, leveraging insurance commission payouts for an agency that had 1,000 reps. And the strategy was to be able to pay the reps the whole years of commission on the insurance brokerage day one that they sell it. And so you can set up a financing instrument to fund that, but you have to create it. Like, it's not out there. You have to just know how to connect things, and they don't teach that really, of the connecting and how to think outside the box. And so I would say, if I were to dial it down to just one thing that we look at that is different in a founder, is the founder's core to who the person is. I mean, that's the first thing I look at. I won't spend any more time if I don't like the guy or girl, or we don't get along, or they're not a good person, or they don't think holistically, if they're too selfish, too egotistical. So there's a lot that goes into understanding the founder that we spend a lot more time on, because a lot of, that's why we're also agnostic to the industry, specifically for that reason, because there's funds that are specifically health tech or AI or industrial tech or prop tech or whatever it may be, AI data center. I mean, there's all different kinds of, real estate funds and all these different plays. But at the end of the day, the strategy or your expertise in that one field isn't going to take you to promised land. It's not going to take you to an exit. It's not going to take you through those stages. It's the person. It's how does that person deal with stress and risk and pressure, and are they in the right role, right? If we have to move them from CEO to COO or CRO or CTO or board, or, hey, do you have such a big ego that you don't realize that you're better just kind of sitting back and let this thing run because you had a really great idea? You're going to get paid on it, but you don't know business, right? Like, and you need to bring those people in. So So having the person that we're going to be backing, that we're all on the same page, and that we can work with them, right?
It's a very different it's gold because you gave me a different approach to investing. Most people say my thesis is an industry or a market, but you are a founder first VC where you're trying to find good people that can move the needle or great people that can move the needle that need a little bit of gasoline in
Yeah.
their engine and then they
Yep.
fly.
Yep. Yeah. And and we help along the way, but they got to know mostly what they're doing.
Of course. And that's like, maybe one of the biggest pet peeves I have with being through some cycles perhaps or is like buzzwords. Like it was cannabis at one time and then it was blockchain and the other time and now it's AI. And I get hundreds of requests saying, "Hey, I have an AI this, an AI that, or a blockchain this, a blockchain that, or kind of like it gets very cannibalized and it doesn't really outperform because it's not founder first. It's not it's not really because the founder is who's going to carry you to the promised land and it's going to be able to tackle hurdles and move about and like you said, I agree. This is a big game and if you want to win, you need the right team. And I think it's a contact sport, so you need someone that can take a hit as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to have somebody that's not going to cave at the first no or the first bad thing, because bad shit's going to happen throughout the entire life cycle of the company, and it's just going to get harder the bigger you get. So if you're not handling it at the front end, you need to do some reflection. And I'm not saying you, but I'm saying, I mean, I had to do that same stuff, right? Like things got big, and I had to step back. Not I was forced to because I just wasn't ready. Like there's things that there's stresses I couldn't handle, so I kind of had to slow down and work on myself a little more to handle some of that stuff to be able to continue to move. So it's not you're not going boom just straight up. You're like going boom down, boom down, boom down, boom down, you down, 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 and then up, up, up. So it's like it's never just a neat, and that's the part that is stressful. That's the part that makes people not want to do it. It's the unpredictability. That's why it's easier. Just that's why the thought goes through a lot of entrepreneurs' minds, and I talk to them. It would be a lot easier if I just went and got a job. So much things would be easier. But
I think there's that famous saying like choose your heart. Both are hard, but one makes you work 10 times harder just to not be the other. Like you can work your life away on a company because you want the security, whereas the other one would work 80 hours a week just to not work for somebody else and be this kind of freedom in their mind. Talking deal flow, now let's switch to capital flow. When you structure a $50 million fund, your first one, second one, now third, what are key or critical elements to that you've discovered to attract the right LPs?
I think LPs like, so here's if I'm thinking about this, the biggest thing that I see from people trying to raise capital that's so off is the salesy stuff to it. Like there's just so much salesy stuff going on, and there's not a lot of authenticity, real, like just conversation. And that's really at the end of the day, like if you can break through that, and that's the key sauce is how can I move from this just being a guy that I got time with or a girl that I got time with for 15 minutes to pitch to how can I bring value to you? How can I have a long-term relationship with you? It may be this, it may not be, but I want to know what you care about so that I can make sure that I'm bringing value to you and not just asking for something. And so that, if you take that and extrapolate that out, there's a lot of things in that, but it's really how quick can you get them to trust you and be willing to, because you got to and that's how you sell yourself on raising capital forever, right? If you can sell yourself on the fact that I know what I'm doing, you can trust me, and then you have to back it up. And then if you're able to back it up and you're authentic and honest about everything, then everything year after year after year, you can keep coming back. And sometimes even if stuff fails, you can still go back because you've now built that rapport and that trust and that authenticity to where they're not in the dark. And that's the biggest thing with capital. Like when whether I'm raising or deploying, is The second you let go is the fear of this is never going to come back, right? And so for raising capital, you got to make that comfortable. Really, at the end of the day, it's getting them comfortable quick.
Yeah, I hear you, and agree. Let's switch gears into something that I know is something you focus more on your personal podcast, which is mindset and operating principles, and perhaps a little bit more practical knowledge that everybody can use. And you talk about burnout, stretch thin. What systems and habits do you have that bring back clarity and alignment that you think is like, I use this daily.
Yeah. There's a lot because I haven't told anybody this actually. I'm in the middle of writing a book,
Beautiful.
and yeah, so it doesn't have, it's very early, but I've been thinking about this because it's around habit changes, right? So it's around, instead of like on the first of the year trying to do these 15 things for the next 365 days, what if you just picked one thing that's small and did it for the next 30 days, right? And then in 30 days, you pick something different. And then look back in a year and see if anything changed, because I can guarantee you that you're going to change a lot more than those last 15 years that you've been trying to change everything on the first day of the year and never doing anything, right? So that's where I've been really focused personally. I lost like 70 pounds over the last year and a half, and so like building habits and building things into my life, which I was probably, you know, I'm an all or nothing guy, so like I tend to just go really hard into like fixing things if there's something that's not working, versus trying to, just do it over time. And so, but with personal mindset shifts, there's been a ton. I mean, understanding how much stress affects your businesses and your relationships and your ability, right? I mean, that's something just that I've seen the effects of over like the last 6 months of just getting my sleep reorganized, taking one of the biggest things that over the last several years that has made probably one of the biggest improvements for me is just taking dedicated time to slow down, right? As entrepreneurs, we're going to be just going hard all the time. There's no way around it, until you're dead or retired or your exit, right? And so you're going to be going hard this whole time. How do you do it and enjoy it and be sustainable? Because there was years where at the end of the day, I knew it's what I wanted to do, but it wasn't really enjoyable. There was times where it's like, this is not enjoyable. This is a lot of stress, a lot of work. Yeah, I'm making money, but it's just not, and so you're going to have those moments. Everyone's going to have those moments, and it's being just comfortable sitting in uncomfortable situations, right? And not getting all the chaotic. Everyone gets so chaotic and emotional over everything, and if you can dull that down a little bit and just understand that it's not nothing is really ever the end of the world, and some things are, but most things are not. And so if you can just sit there and not sabotage yourself, by just going and going and going and not sitting, just slowing down and thinking a little bit. There's a lot to that, man. There's a lot to that. I mean, that's what makes or breaks people.
I think there's a lot of correlation between being a high performing athlete and being a high performing person, that before there was not enough discussion around sleep, eating healthy, like there before it was like the entrepreneur worked 18 hours a day. It was flat out for like you said, until you drop dead or you exit or you retire. But now I believe there's a lot more correlation, at least with how people approach their bodies and their mindset and their habits to be a little bit more more higher performing. And like you said, I like what you said. It was like, try to focus on a habit for 30 days, maybe correlating a little bit with atomic habits, that, try something small for a little bit of time and then keep building on those smaller habit changes to get to a higher level of just output. And also I agree with you. There's, how do you do it for to slow yourself down? Because I can tell your intensity is at 10 and you do everything 0 or 100, but what are you doing to slow down?
Well, let's see. So let's look at it. So I'm in bed at 9 something by 10. I'm up by 5:30. I take a cold shower first thing in the morning. I do a prayer and like a little meditation. I journal at night on same things, almost like I track like my moods and I track different things, and then I talk, I get a little recap of the day. So like journaling. So it's all things that, I have that. I have podcasts that I play. I'm not really, I like music, but I kind of mix it up, right? So it depends, and you just got, it's a lot of it's like learning how to listen to what you need. Because not everyone's the same. Other people need different things, right? You know, I don't have some responsibilities that other people have, right? Like I had somebody on my show. She was a mom, a kid with special needs, and a couple other kids, and a husband, and a job, and a business. And I'm like, she needs different things than what I would need to make sure that I'm staying sane and moving forward, right? And people have different thresholds. Just like they do in risk, they have different thresholds of what they can handle stress wise. And, I see a therapist every other week, and I have for years. Same person. And it took me a while to find the right person, but once I found her, and she's just I need somebody that's like hard on me. And so she's a therapist, but she used to be a wealth manager and got into, and so I was like, how did I find you? But she's great. And she, and I had, the therapist before too. Some of them just didn't work because I wasn't ready to like be fully open with them. And a lot of that is I would say, okay, that's really what it is. At the end of the day, if you can have people that you trust to confide in that have your best interest in mind and no alternative agenda, which is why therapy is what it is, because it's an unbiased opinion. Now, do I think all therapists are great? No. I think there's a lot of messed up therapists. But there's also a lot of good ones, just like anything, and you just got to go through and find that. But having someone to bounce things off of, and entrepreneurship is lonely. So if you're not in like a peer group, I'm in two different mastermind groups, so that helps a ton. So I didn't have all that stuff starting off, right? Like almost none of that, and that's all been built over years, slowly, because I just didn't know about it, right? We didn't have podcasts that we could learn this stuff from. You'd had to fall across a book and maybe read about it or have someone tell you about it or go to a conference, but who's doing any of that stuff at 17? Nobody. And so, that's why, I wish that schools would do a little more emphasis on some of that stuff, and hopefully they, eventually will, as they see that, I've seen that trajectory over the last 15, 20 years of school being like, you're an idiot if you don't go to college, to, maybe go to technical school, go to coding school. I was just talking to a guy the other day. We're looking at a company that AI coding tech school, and it's funded by companies, and there's tuition, and they're guaranteed six-figure incomes. And so it's like there's so many things out there that are against the conventional way of doing things, because the world's changing, and universities, we'll see if they change with it or not, or what happens there. I think that's going to be an interesting space to watch over the next 10 years, how that changes, because it's going to change. AI, colleges, people starting things, businesses can start so much quicker, right? Everything can start so much quicker. So when you look at 4 or 5 years, or MBA or law degree, 8, 10 years, when you get out in the world, you hit a button and it does everything you just worked on for 8 years with us in a second. How degrading is that to what you spent your time on for 8 years?
I appreciate. Thank you for being so open about this stuff, because I think it's very clear what it takes to operate at your level. It's no man is an island, and we all need help, and we all need to make sure that to operate at that level, you need, like you said, it depends on your circumstances and your responsibilities and your level of stress and how you handle it. But this habit and operating principles need to be something that everybody works at. And talking about AI and building, and I know you're a builder, you're build companies, you start companies, but you're also an investor. Something, I'm also an entrepreneur, and I turned an investor. And the hardest thing for me was, to use influence instead of operate, because I wanted to be like in the field. I wanted to make the shot. I wanted, as an entrepreneur, you're an operator. How do you toggle between that mentality of let me do it, instead of let me show you the way as an.
So let me make sure I got the question right. So as an investor, if I'm investing in somebody, how do I let go of the reins?
Yeah, and not try to operate yourself. Like, how do you restrict yourself from that?
That's probably one of my biggest downfalls is giving away too freely of my time because I see opportunities. That's the hardest thing for me. How do you invest? How do you back or help people without wanting to do it for them? We'll say.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that because and that kind of goes to the person, right? If the person is willing and teachable, like those are things that even when I was 17 hiring people, I was like, if you're willing to take advice and you have a work ethic and you're coachable, you can do whatever you want to do. And taking that, and taking the action behind it. If I have a founder, whether I'm investing in them as a founder or I'm deploying capital on the debt side, the debt side's different, right? I mean, that's kind of a little more black and white. Either you fit the box or you don't. And so that's less about the founder, and that's more of a math thing and a risk thing. But when you're talking to founders or even just friends of mine, I mean, it's the same thing. I treat everyone the same. Like, I just want to help if I can help. And if I can't help, I don't want to give you any help or advice because it's all bullshit. Because, I could think of a way that I could try to help you, but, I like to stick in what I know. And so, yeah, I think it's just having that person that's coachable. And that's what I want when I'm looking at them. So before I start working with you or whoever that may be, I want to know that we can work together and I can, how I work too, right? Like, this is how it works best for me. I can look at things. And so, like, we have different meetings and intervals and stuff. And yeah, do I see stuff that needs to be changed? If it's too drastic or too dramatic, or it's going to make them fail or hurt them badly, I will almost force them to look at it or realize it and take it and address it. But I can't do anything for anybody, right? They got to do stuff on their own. I've tried it before. I've tried doing stuff for people that don't want it, and you do it and nobody appreciates it, or you did it, but you didn't do it the right way. And so, I've gone and stepped back on that into, we need to be on the same page. We need to both have buy-in to this stuff and to working together. Because I'm not naive to think that I know everything either about certain stuff, even lending. Like, I learned stuff about that all the time that I had no idea. And I live, eat, breathe, sleeped it for 100 hours a week for 15 years and across a lot of different verticals of, the tech build outs to underwriting, collections, servicing, raising, deal structuring, litigation, all that stuff. You're always, it's constantly learning, and it's not learning how to do it to be successful. It's learning how to do it better to be more successful. There's very minimal things you got to do to be successful, which I see as if you can, create something that you're passionate about that generates more income and more freedom than what you would do it, if you had a job per se, right? Like, if you can get into a business where you can just supersede your happiness and maybe not even the income. If you can supersede the happiness and match the income, that's, I think, key to anybody in going into business. And so it's a long-winded answer, but yeah, coaching people, it's hard when you got to let people fail sometimes too. It's a balancing act, right? And it's a balancing act of not giving unasked for advice, getting buy-in, having people come to you when they're ready for things. And so I work with people that are ready to take coaching and are willing to understand that they don't know everything about everything, and that they can pivot and learn something new.
I like the coachability as a metric to invest or not, because I think coachability, not that you know more, but when someone is willing to learn, you both can benefit. And I think such an important aspect of business, when you go to the traditional route and you have the Harvard degree, Blackstone on your, is that the coachability is diminished perhaps because you went to the top places. So, but that doesn't necessarily make you more successful. What's the truth about business or investing you believe deeply, but that most people would disagree with?
Well, Have you seen the stock market lately? I was a wealth manager for a while, and and so what are some things that I think that other people would disagree with? I think it depends on who you're talking to, because there's people that probably agree or at some standpoint with most things, right? Because I don't go way outside the box. Like, I'm not an idiot. I don't try to do things that I know are like obviously probably not going to work. Like, I'm not trying to test things or risk people's money that way. I do it through there's a little methodicalness to it, right? Of doing a little bit of analytics, testing, and some of these things. But I think from my standpoint, like when we were doing our debt funds, the biggest thing that I would look at that a lot of people hadn't looked at is how to de-risk transactions. And how do you de-risk an investment or a purchase or whatever it may be? And it's through creativity of deal structuring. I think that's really where I've seen, I guess, if I look back over these funds and capital raising and just all the lending stuff that we've done, is looking at metrics that other people have never thought are a metric to even look at that are valuable, right? Like, I'll give you an example. So, like 7 years ago, we started analyzing some of our phone calls for sentiment and tone, right? AI will be able to do that at scale, right? Like it can now for the masses, but we were looking at that kind of stuff 7 years ago. Nobody else was looking at that. Did we underwrite and did we make decisions off of it right away? No. But were those data points that we wanted to start tracking to see if there was? That's what I mean about curiosity. Nobody, nobody that I hear about, like an example, like if I was helping somebody create some kind of e-commerce lending platform or something, I would say, well, what do you look at in their domain? How do you score and price this loan based off of the visitors to their domain? Because you can de-risk a transaction if they look like they have thousands of customers, but you see that they only have 5 people that go on their website. You never knew how many people went on their website. You never even thought to ask. So it's thinking of those creativity points and those KPIs that nobody's ever thought about to hack something, because I believe the private credit and that whole world's all jacked up. It's so disjointed. Banks, private credit, family offices, non-bank lenders, hard money, commercial real estate. There's no connectivity across any of it. So everyone's doing all kinds of different things, kind of similar, but all very differently, right? But they're all kind of in that same ballpark, right? Credit, cash flow, EBITDA, collateral, leverage, things of that sort. But there's so many other data points on deal flow that you could get access to that is less risky, but it seems risky because you haven't done enough work to dive in and create other models or things. So that's, yeah, I think just getting creative into asking questions of things that people haven't ever asked.
I like that of going through the checklist, but adding the questions that people never asked, going to that level of curiosity where it takes you to find either real value or perhaps a pass, which is you might be like, oh, this looks amazing, but something here didn't actually make sense.
Right. Right.
What's next on your horizon, personally or professionally, that's sort of driving you to every day? So there's no easy questions on the Founders Forum.
I see that. You're challenging me. What's on the, I mean, we're in the midst of our venture fund. So Black Bay, our first emerging venture fund. So that's like in the midst. I'm doing a lot of travel, a lot of investor meetings, and, we're trying to wrap that raise up here in the next like 60 days. So that's really on the immediate horizon. And that's another thing too. I've learned try not to project out too far. Everyone talks about goal planning and all this stuff, but when I get into the weeds of this thing, I talk to people that are wildly more successful than I am. I start to see that a lot of the ways that they made it were never as planned. Most times they were never as planned. So when you start like negative and positive, and so when you think about it, with therapy or whatever, mindfulness, mindset shifts is if you can dial all that back, right? And just see that, you can, sorry, dude, I'm so sorry. I just went totally off track there. Can you ask that again?
Sure. So what's pushing you forward? I think you're going on the right direction. Like I think it's incredible that most people put themselves like a 25-year goal or 50-year goal. And
Yeah.
I even met someone that had 1,000-year plan for his family office. And then I met the
Yeah.
kids and I was like, this is not gonna get to Gen 2. Like this is crazy. What's motivating you in like the next few months?
Yeah, so motivating me for the next few months, I mean, obviously the venture fund, we're excited to deploying capital. So we're side by side with raising capital and talking to investors, which I love this part of the raise because I meet so many new people. I have so many different things that come about, and there's just so many good people out there that want to help, and it's just making things fit. And so capital raising is fun for me. So a lot of those meetings are fun, and then, being able to go deploy that capital and work with founders, that's the exciting things. Really just getting, COVID kind of pushed me personally back a little bit from like getting engaged in the markets and stuff. And, we were lending, doing 20 loans a week, and then it all of a sudden just halts. And so, these last couple of years has been getting back in the trenches. And so this was really the first time that I've raised since pre-COVID. Seeing what those dynamics look like, but I think the where we're at is very prime for venture capital. The timing of how we fell into this is just perfect. But that's what I'm excited about, is working with founders, getting some people onto the show and highlighting them. And that's kind of a power of our venture show, is that we can bring founders on that maybe we haven't even invested in yet, and just give them an extra little boost, of exposure. So that's what we're excited about for this summer. And I had shoulder surgery last year, a snow skiing accident. So I didn't golf all year. And so at the little time I'm going to have, I probably have to bring an investor, but getting out on the golf course will be nice. I'm in Kansas City, man. So we only get it so a short period of time to actually have decent weather to golf. So
Yeah.
yeah.
For those listening who want to go deeper with into your world, whether it's like Black Bay, your podcast, or coaching, or in the short future, your book, where should they head next?
Man, how deep do you want to go, right? But so I have my personal website, so it's austinmoss.com. You can connect with me on there. My team can connect with you there. And then also our two main companies is Capital Collaboration and Black Bay Venture Capital Fund. So Black Bay, if you want to connect like investors, founders, startup, we have an incubator and accelerator. So there's a ton of stuff that you'll see coming online on that website. So blackbayfund.com. But yeah, I'd love to, DM me, whatever, I'm looking for all different types of relationships. So I'd love to connect with any of your audience. So
For sure. Austin, thank you again for showing us to think differently can have a very big payoff. And you've taught us so much about habits and building a new investing, building companies, thinking differently, and curiosity being your main driver. So I thank you again for coming. And this was very refreshing and exciting for me to hear someone that's building something truly special by just being different.
yeah, thanks, Ahmad. I really appreciate you bringing me on, and it's a great show. And hopefully I'll get you on mine here sometime soon. So
With pleasure.
appreciate it. All
Thank you.
right. Thank you. Have a good one.